Good afternoon, crafters, and welcome to P2PCrafts Presents, brought to you by From Picture to Page and Beyond Papercrafts shows. I'm your host, Michelle Brown, Creative Director at From Picture to Page and Beyond, which is our scrapbooking, mixed media art and papercrafts community. Now, P2PCraft presents demonstrations and interviews with our talented retailers and some very special guest artists. And we've got a whole heap of sessions coming right to your craft room, lounge room and homes. Now, for all the information of the P2PCraft sessions, head over to our website from picturetopageandbeyond.com.au, where you can see recordings of all the past sessions, see who's coming up, and of course, while you're there, make sure you're on our mailing list so we can let you know who's coming. And of course, keep you up to date with the weekly summaries as well. Now, whether you're watching live on Facebook or on a replay on Facebook or YouTube, we would love to know that you're there. So make sure you pop a comment in the comments. And I can see we've already got Wendy and Diana and Margaret and Christine there. So hello, everyone, and welcome to this really exciting session. So today, P2PCraft presents Niamh Baly. Hello, Niamh.
Hi, everybody.
It is so good to have you here. So
thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, I was just saying earlier, I've had a little bit of a dig around and I've managed to find some of these. So this, if people haven't heard of you in your art journaling recently, this might be where people heard from you.
Yep. So both Sue Bowers and myself used to run Pipe Dreaming and manufacture opals embossing enamels.
Yeah.
So we started that in 2001 and I think we wrapped up 2013, I think.
Right.
So it was a fair chunk of my life.
Yeah, and I definitely remember seeing you at the paper shows with all your beautiful displays up there.
Yeah, we used to love going to all the paper shows. It's my favourite thing. For someone who's very shy in normal life, I absolutely love demonstrating. So I used to love standing up there for 3 days and talking my face off.
Exactly. Well, that's certainly what we're going to see today. So now I can see you're doing a lot more art journaling. Sort of how did you get from pipe dreaming to art journaling?
I actually started art journaling really early. In 2003, my sister and I went back to Europe, to England and Ireland and lived there for a year and travelled around.
Oh,
and I used to do an awful lot of stamping and stuff. I always used to do that. So I had to pack up a craft kit to go with me. So I had a journal and collage ephemera I collected on the way, glue stick, some Neo colour crayons. They were my paint palette.
Yep.
And it used to be great because I'd sit on trains and just decorate and go and record my travels. So that's how I used to get into it. And for a long time, the business took over and doing all that sort of stuff. And when I had my second child, I needed to do something for myself again. When I had my first kid, I'd be exhausted at the end of the day and sit in front of TV and do nothing. And I thought, no, I can't continue to do this. So my art journaling is my me time, and I get an hour to myself where I can create and get every frustration or every great thing out of me.
Yeah.
And, you know, practice makes progress. So the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah, I love that. Practice makes progress, because I think that's why it's so easy online to get overwhelmed. You see people's finished products and you think that, like you said, they just sat down, threw it together in 30 seconds and it's always perfect. They don't see the practice. They don't see the mistakes. They don't see all the smudged bits or the things that didn't stick down properly. So that's great.
Yeah.
And I love how you use it to carve out your me time as well, because I think we're finding that more and more often with our crafters is that we need something. It's that need to create and to have that time to ourselves in a way to switch your brain off and use a different part of it.
That's it, definitely. And just have that relaxation. And for me, I feel like I've accomplished something. I can walk out of my room at the end of the evening and have an art journal page done. It's like I've done something. I can actually see something physically that I've actually created.
Yep.
Instead of, you know, sitting on top couch watching TV and being on my phone all night.
And at the moment, it's so easy to consume, to just be bringing things in, but actually turning that off and actually creating something is the challenge.
Yeah. And, of course, you know, with all the positive news on the media at the moment, it's really nice to come into my art studio and not have anything on and just, you know, have some music on or something and block the world out.
Yep, excellent. So what are you going to show us today, Niamh?
Today I'm going to show you a fairly simple art journal page, just using collage background and some of my favourite techniques. So some ghosting with stenciling and how to layer with collage papers. So just playing around. And I will give you this warning, as I give everyone when I teach classes, I do work quickly. I've always worked quickly when I do art. So some people get a little overwhelmed by that. But for me personally, in the process, I find if I work quickly, I don't overthink my decisions as well. So it kind of forces me just to choose and go and deal with it.
Yep.
So that's the great thing about this, because it is going to be recorded. And if I do go too fast for you, you can always stop and catch up and then replay it again later. So
Pause it and catch up. Excellent. Okay. Okay, well, you get yourself set up. And excellent. So we've got some lovely comments here. Now we had Christine saying that she had a whole heap of opals still. So that is good news.
fabulous.
Excellent. And Wendy down said, yes, it's bucketing down in Melbourne. So hopefully you can still hear everything over the sound. So it looks like Niamh's ready to go. So take it away.
Okay, so this similar page to what we're going to be creating today, and it's using the Dina Wakley collage tissue faces. For those people who do follow my YouTube channel, I'm a big Dina Wakley tragic. I just love her products. I love the colorways and so on, so I do tend to use a lot of her stuff. So that's what we're going to be using today. Just for you guys, I'm breaking into a brand new journal. So I've dated it today, so it's very
how exciting. Thank you.
have a new journal. So this is the Dina Wakley Blue Journal. So it's amazing. I love it. And basically, this is what we're going to be creating with today. So I've got a whole heap of collage bits and pieces I have. These are all gel prints that I've done that I just use as collage fodder. It's a French to English dictionary page, some typed paper that I found somewhere, some tissue paper that I've been using the gloss acrylic sprays on. So that's sort of what I'm going to be using as my collage in the background. This is also deli paper that I've just stenciled through with acrylic paints. I love doing this because you can create your own collage papers and it gives a really cool effect too. I've also got some foil, because I noticed in one of your demonstrations, Michelle, that you had used foil, so I thought we could maybe incorporate that in there too. So
Excellent, lovely.
the other thing is the Dina Wakley tissue faces. If you don't have this, you could draw your own face. If you've got some tissue paper, you could trace over a face in a magazine with pencil, or you can stamp a face onto some tissue paper. So there's alternatives for that as well. So I'm going to be using some matte gel medium. This is Dina Wakley brand. Any brand will work, but I tend to prefer to use matte because it doesn't get quite as sticky and as glossy as other ones. So this is where the no thinking comes in, because all I do is just put down some gel medium and tear and just seal over the top. Now, one thing you will find, sorry, I keep hitting my light because I'm actually standing up for a change instead of sitting down, is that with my gel prints, I've actually done them on copy paper, just normal printer paper, and sometimes the thin gloss gel medium or the soft gel medium, you need to put a little bit more on to glue those down nice and flat. It's working quite well with this one, but if you find it lifting, you can just add some more gloss medium over the top, or you can buy a thicker gel medium and you could use that to glue it down as well. So there are always solutions. So this is often the way when I art journal. I don't tend to art journal with a plan in mind. I just do. And if I'm sitting there at night and I'm not sure what I want to do, this is usually the way I would break up a page. I find it difficult to work with a blank page to begin with because I usually don't have an idea of what I'm doing. So I just sit there and stare at the blank page. But by doing this, it gives me something to do. It keeps my hands busy. And by the time I get to the end of it, I start thinking about, oh, well, you could put this here, or you could add this to it, or you could do that to it. So it gives me some thinking time and some breathing space as I'm creating. So you can see here nothing's going together. The colours aren't going together. I'm just tearing up pieces to fit into the spaces. We will be bringing this all together at the end. So it's okay for it to look like a hot mess. In fact, it's probably better that it looks like a hot mess because you're not going to get attached to it. As the very wise Dina Wakely says, if you don't want to do anything over the top of it, it's probably finished already. So, yeah, if you want to keep adding to it, it means it's not finished. So when I'm putting the gel medium on, I'm not actually putting all that much on. And you'll notice I'm sort of continuing to use the same brush and spreading it out over the top. When I teach classes, I find that some people use an awful lot of gel medium and things get really thick and really sticky, and it takes ages for pieces to dry. So if you're finding that you've got lumps and bumps and so on, you're probably using a little bit too much, and you can just spread it out a little bit more. So the great thing about using tissue papers like the one I'm just putting down now is because when you do it with gel medium, it goes translucent, so I can get that text going over the top of some of my other colours and get a really cool contrast happening. So this is a great way to make your own tissues, but you can also buy lots and lots of pre-printed tissues as well. So it's always nice to make stuff yourself. And for those of you who know me, I don't do white space, so I tend to fill in everything. Those people who've got a little bit more of strength than me, you can most certainly leave bits of white, but I just tend to get carried away a little bit, so that's just how I do it. Okay, I am going to be restrained though and stop there. And here's one I prepared earlier as well. So I'm actually going to do two different sizes for you. So this is a little Dina Wakely 6x6 journal. So you can do this in any size, any shape. You could do a double spread doing this. There's no right or wrong way. What I'm going to do quickly is just heat it with a heat gun, just to get the surface dry enough that I can do my next layer. So hopefully this won't be too loud for you.
No, that's good. That's not too loud at all. You've got a nice quiet one.
I do. This little heat gun is over 25 years old. It's been in use for a long time. It did all my opals embossings. I've obviously coloured it with alcohol inks to make it look more interesting. It was my way of being able to identify it when I was teaching classes. So all I'm doing now, and this isn't too tacky, but if you've got some foil and you would like some bling on your page, you can actually just put the foil over the top. And this is going to be really, really subtle, but I can see some little bits of sparkle coming up. And what happens is where the gel medium is just a little bit tacky, you will just get some little bits of gold. So I don't know if you can see that in the light, those little bits of sparkle.
Yes, we can see just a little bit of sparkle.
Yeah, so it's quite subtle. Obviously, I dried that off beforehand a little bit. If you had left that wet and allowed it to go a little bit tacky, then you could glue that down. I can see just a little bit here is sticking up. I'm just going to go back in and glue that down. I like to look all professional and use a paintbrush, but most of the times I actually just use my fingers.
Yes, fingers definitely handy when it comes to collage.
It is indeed. Okay, so one of the things that I love about when I art journal is I tend to use acrylic mediums, which means when they're dry, they're permanent, which allows you to do lots and lots of layers. The gel medium also basically acts as a sealer to the page. So because that's been covered entirely with gel medium, I can now add some paints on top of it and do some different techniques with excuse me, different techniques with it, and it's not going to seep into the fibers of the paper. The acrylic paint is going to be trapped between that sealed layer and my next layer. So, oops. I've got a craft lunch happening over here. Something else has just fallen on the floor. So I'm just going to squeeze on some paint. So this is cheddar. I haven't thinned it down. I don't have a wet brush, and I'm just rubbing it over my collage. And there may be some of you screaming at the screen, why are you doing that? You've just put all that collage down, now you're painting over the top of it. But layers are interesting, and layers makes you want to actually look through and find what's happening. So I've put the paint down. I'm going to put a stencil over the top. Get a very trusty wet wipe, and I'm going to wipe away. So this is why it's really important to have that matte medium in the background, because it seals the page. So you can rip everything off. And you get the pattern in the background through the paint. So I'm just going to do that down the bottom as well.
And Niamh, do you know which brand that stencil is?
That's an Art by Marlene one of her new ones.
Ah, lovely.
But there are a few loopy ones like that. I know the Crafters Workshop have a few like this as well. So, excuse me. I really love those sort of flowery patterns. Now, anything with, sorry, swallowed something the wrong way. Any stencil will work to do this. So whatever you've got in your stash will work. The important thing to this, though, is you must make sure it is dry before you do the next layer. You want this to be permanent, because I'm going to do the same technique over the top of this. And if my original paint layer is not dry, it's going to wipe off as well. If it's also not dry, the wet paint's going to mix with my new paint and make a new colour. So it's really important when you're working with acrylics, if you're happy with the layer and you don't want to change anything, that you make sure it is dry. And again, you can leave this to the side to dry and go on with another project, or if you've got a heat tool, that you could go and use that. I'm just going to go different colour paint. Just clean my brush. And again, I'm actually going to overlap where I've already painted before, which again seems a little bit strange, but it's going to give me some interesting effects. What you'll also notice happening is by painting over my collage, I'm actually starting to bring everything together. And I'm starting to make everything look a little bit more cohesive. So I noticed my mum was watching this as well. And Mum always used to say to me when I was a kid, know when to stop. And unfortunately, I've never really truly learnt that lesson. So those people who know better than me, you can stop this process at any stage. If you really like what you've got, stop. If you don't learn like me, you just keep going. So what happens now is you've got that stenciling over the top, everything's sort of cohesive, but you can actually still see the individual layers of collage underneath. So that's where the layering really comes in handy. So when I'm doing this, I do tend to use the same stencil over again. So I'm not introducing too many new patterns to the page. It's just more layers of the same pattern, just in different colours. Okay. I really shouldn't do this, but, you know, it's me. I'm just adding a bit of a contrast colour on the page. Contrasts are really important. So the two colours I used were Dina Wakley colours, fuchsia and cheddar. And this colour is sky. So the fuchsia and cheddar are called analogous colours. They kind of sit next to each other on the colour wheel. And the blue acts, or the sky acts as the opposite of the complementary colour. So it just gives you a little bit of pop of colour on the page and just helps to tie everything together a little bit. Now, I've been fairly heavy-handed on this page with adding my paint, just so you can sort of see the effect. But again, depending on the paint colours you choose, you can have something really soft in the background where the collage in the background's more the focus, or you can do something like this where you've got the collage in the background that adds some texture, but the paint in the foreground's more the focus. So it gives you lots of ways to work. Right. Okay, so what's next? What's next is the collage faces. So these are the collage faces which are printed on thin tissue paper. And the great thing about these is once you add the acrylic, the matte medium to them, they go translucent. So I'm actually going to be able to see what's behind it. Now, I'm usually not very fussy when it comes to my art journal, but one thing that really does bug me is having a white halo around these collage images or collage words when I do them. For some people it doesn't bother them, but I really like just actually fussy cutting my images and getting rid of those pieces. Now, with these little pieces that you've cut off, you can stamp onto those and make your own collage tissues as well. So, you know, as is with everything in art, nothing's ever wasted.
No, it gets to a point where you have to start throwing some things away, but it's always good to keep.
That is true. Yeah, I've actually come to that in the last year or so. I've actually got more ruthless and do throw things away, but it's taken me a long time to get there.
Yeah, my rule of thumb with gel prints is once it's about smaller than 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, then it has to go.
Oh, that's a good rule. Mind you, then you could chuck them into the background like this and
exactly, or punch out of them.
There's always a way to use something.
Definitely.
Okay, so again, just like I did before with my collage, I'm laying down, I've put the gel medium down first, and then with whatever excess is on my brush, I'm just brushing it down. And you can see that that's becoming translucent. So basically what you're doing is, I don't know if there's any scientific principle to this whatsoever, but I actually like to kind of scrub it in. I don't know whether that works the gel medium into the surface a little bit more, so it becomes a little more translucent. I like to think it to myself it works a bit better, but I could be fooling myself. So the great thing about this is now I've got a really bold image, focal image over my page, and I haven't done very much work to this whatsoever. I can still see my texture in the background. I can still see my paint colours coming through. I can still see the text of the collage in the background. So it sort of all starts to play together. Again, I'm going to go in and heat this. And, you know, you could have bits of this sitting aside, go and do another journal and come back to this. This background that we've done, if you're a card maker or a scrapbooker, it'd be great to do these on single sheets of paper, and you could cut those up into card fronts. And have really cool backgrounds that you could put a stamped image or something over the top as well. So there's always a way to use something.
And Niamh, that's a really good point. So even though what you're doing is in an art journal, there's no reason why you couldn't do it in a scrapbooking layout, whether that's 12 by 12, 8 by 8, 6 by 8.
Oh, definitely.
Or cut it up smaller for card fronts. The same things work.
And it's really important when you watch things that you adapt it to what you're used to doing. So I'm not a scrapbooker, but some scrapbookers do amazing mixed media backgrounds that I can take the techniques and apply to my art journals. And hopefully some of the techniques I do in my art journals people can then transfer over. Some people look at things and think, oh, that's in an art journal, so it always has to stay in an art journal. So it's just that thinking outside the box, which is really important. So if you wanted to do something like this and you didn't have those collage tissues, you can buy single packs of collage tissue. This is a Dina Wakley one, comes in a pack of 20. You can use gift tissue as well. Just have a go with it first, because some tissue is a little bit more opaque than others, but most will work well. If you have got your hands on some deli paper as well, it's not the same as parchment paper, but I don't know why it's not the same as parchment paper. I just know you can get it from specialty places. It'll all work the same. So I'm just showing you what you can do. And again, it doesn't have to be a face. It could be anything, any stamp that you've got. So it's a great way to add your own stamped images into your journals. So same process really, and same thing about trimming up the excess white. And again, this is just me and my personal preference. You don't have to do this.
And also, just to point out, Niamh, you've also used permanent ink. So when you put the matte medium over it, it will stay.
Thank you. Yes, I used archival ink. I tend to always use archival ink when I'm working, because I do tend to work in layers all the time. You can get some really cool coloured archival inks as well, which work just the same. So this is the little piece I showed you beforehand. I haven't done any of that extra paint over the background. I've just collaged it. So, you know, you don't have to do everything. It's always the same when I'm actually working. I pile stuff up and then I can never find where I've put it. So again, I'm just putting the gel medium over the top and then just working that in. Now, the reason I've put this on tissue paper and not directly stamped it into my book is because it is lumpy and bumpy with the collage on there. So by doing this, I get this beautiful, perfect image. If I tried to stamp that in, it would have been really difficult. The fact that I've been able to put this image right up against the spine here as well, I wouldn't be able to do that with my stamping. So stamping onto tissue paper makes a real difference when you're working. This one, I'm just going to go in. I'm actually going to do one that's really, really simple, which is very un-me. So I'm actually going to call that done.
Oh, excellent. And simple can be good too.
Simple can be good too. I'm going to add more to this one in a second, but yeah, I like that. The only thing I am actually going to, sorry, I lied. The only thing I am going to do to that one, and it's something I do to all my figures, no matter what I do to them, I always add in the whites of the eyes and the catch-alls. And the reason for that is humans, when we look at faces, we look at our eyes. So it sort of immediately draws our attention to it. So if you really want to make this pop out and, you know, make itself known as a face, if you draw attention to the eyes, it just makes all the difference in the world. And it doesn't have to be very neat. I'm going to dull that one down a little bit, but you can immediately see how that pops that face out of the page.
So Niamh, Margaret was just asking, do you use a particular brand of brush?
To paint with?
Yeah.
No. Well, these are from IKEA, from the children's section. I love them because I've got small hands and they fit in my hand perfectly. I don't like brushes with really long stems, so that works for me. This one was from my $2 store, so I don't spend very much on brushes. I do have, because, you know, I am a junkie, I've got the Dina Wakley brushes, which I do love, and I haven't ever used wider brushes like this, and they can give you some really cool techniques. That's a page I did last night, just using wide brushes to make lots of different marks on it. So, yeah. So I do have some artist brushes, but most of the time they're El Cheapos I get from somewhere. But the one thing I suppose I've found about brushes is they just need to feel comfortable in your hand. If they don't feel comfortable in your hand, you're probably not going to use them very often. Okay, so with this, I could leave it as is, or you can add more colour because, you know, it's me and why not?
Yep. And Niamh, we just had Robert asking what kind of white marker did you just use?
Posca paint pen. Oops, where has it gone? Posca paint pen. It's a 5M bullet point.
Mm-hmm.
So I use that one for mark making and doing that, and I usually have the white and the black in the 1M in the bullet points to do some writing or fine detail work. So those are the two sizes I tend to use all the time. And they go over it, because they're acrylic paint, they go over everything, which makes things a lot easier. So I'm just putting some blue in her hair, as you can. The great thing I find, I suppose, and again, it's because I tend to work with the Dina Wakley paints, is her scribble sticks all match the same colours. Or the colours all match because they all belong to her. So you can actually sort of work with what you've got in the background, what you've got in the foreground. So I'm just going in and putting in some fairly bright cheeks, a little bit of colour on the lips. Okay, and I've just water activated these sticks beforehand, so they're water activated. They're not crayons, she calls them pigment sticks. I don't particularly know the difference. I suppose it doesn't have any wax in it is the main difference. So you can get as creative as you want. And you can see I'm not being particularly careful with how it's going on. Obviously, if you didn't have these, you could go over this with acrylic paint again. If you put a really thin layer on, you're still going to get that translucency. So I don't want anything too opaque. I still want to see what's happening in the background. But it's just to add that just extra little bit of colour.
And Niamh, we've got lots of likes and loves pouring across the screen for your work there.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's nice to hear, because usually it's a bit mad. Okay. So one of the final things I tend to do on all my pages, and you saw I put it on here, is I love to put text on. I'm big about adding text to my pages, whether it's my personal journaling or it's just some words that sort of sum up how I'm feeling. I always like to add some text in some way, shape or form, even if it's like in the background there where I had text stencils that I was using and tearing up in the background. So text to me helps me communicate through my my journal. And you can add text in lots and lots of ways if you've got pens at work. I'm just going to make sure this one does. Yep, cool. So when I journal, I do tend to write in a really messy style. I didn't actually know it had a name. It's called, I always go to say asemic writing. I have to think of asymmetric and then I work out what the word is. So asemic writing is basically lines that look like text. They're illegible text, basically. And the way I do it is to make really big up and down strokes and write everything close together. Although I am a primary school teacher, when I'm doing stuff like this, capital letters, full stops and spaces go out the window, which is shocking, I know, but it's part of that getting stuff out of your system. If you have to stop and think about grammar and punctuation, it actually stops the flow of your writing. So if you can just all go at once, if you're really pedantic about it, you can go back in at the end and put those things in. But it's just about getting those words out of you. So sometimes if your page is still a little bit wet, it might stick, but that's okay because that just adds to texture. Okay. So, of course, you can all read there that's saying I'm on a live with Michelle and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, because that's exactly what it looks like. So, yeah, it's just you can write anything. And basically, for me, the whole point is writing it down. I very rarely go back and try and read what I've written. And quite often in cases, even if I wanted to, I couldn't go back and read what I've written. So it's just about that moment in time, getting it out of your system and writing it down on the page. Okay. So all I'm doing is putting on some words. Those are the stamp words I did before. If you've got the Dina Wakley collage words, you could find a phrase in there if you wanted to and pop that down as well. The great thing about putting the collage tissue over the top of scribble sticks is what the scribble sticks do is tint the tissue, so it actually blends in a little bit more. You actually get a little bit more of a seamless look because it's got that tinting underneath. You do need to be aware that while everything else on this page is permanent, the scribble sticks are water activated medium, so you do add them in your last layer. You probably wouldn't put anything else over the top of those because it will smudge and blend. So that's one more thing. Sorry, I don't really need to do it on this page, but often when I've glued down faces like this or something like this, I tend to go in with the Stabilo All pencil and just re-sketch over the lines. And I do it for two reasons. On this page, it's not really as necessary because you've got the fairly clear lines here. You can kind of see what's going on anyway. But on some pages, those dark lines can sort of get dulled down a little bit. Well, you might have put some extra paint over it, and this helps to pop out your image again. The other reason I like to do it is I can't draw like the fabulous Miss Dina Wakley, but I would really like to learn how to draw like that one day. So by getting my hand to trace those lines, it helps to train my hand to move in that loose technique. So it's a really nice way to practice drawing with a template. So that's something really fun that you can do. I promise I am nearly finished.
So Niamh, Wendy's just asked if you could hold up your matte medium again so she can see what brand it is.
Yep, I can. So I've just coloured in her eyes because they were bugging me. Okay. Right, the matte medium, the gel medium is the Dina Wakley gel medium. It's a soft gel matte medium. So you can get that from most scrapbook art suppliers, but there's lots of other gel mediums on the market. They're not all actually created equal, though. This one I find is very, very soft and very fluid. I did get an Amsterdam brand, which is fabulous, fabulous paint, but the matte gel medium was actually really chalky. So it worked, but it just had a funny texture, and I much prefer this one. But it really is personal preference. I know Liquitex do gel mediums, and they work perfectly fine as well. So whatever you can get your hands on, you can do exactly the same thing with. Yep. So, ta-da, all done.
Excellent. Okay. Well,
two pages.
Fantastic. And that was quick. Okay.
It was quick.
So I'll let you turn your camera back around. Okay. So thank you everyone for watching. That's just been some amazing techniques. It really is lovely to see people, how they do their collaging, how they layer it. I think it was really interesting how Niamh mentioned that if you don't have that brand of tissue, that you can create your own. And just one word, if you haven't done some art journaling before and you haven't heard of the Dali paper, so it is a little bit hard to find in Australia, but also the grease-proof paper, so not the one with the wax on it, but the other one works almost as well, or any thick tissue. And even if you've just got wrapping tissue, it does need to be a little bit more delicate when you're pasting it down, but other than that, that works fine. So excellent. So
just good to know about grease-proof paper because I didn't know that.
Yes, so it is a little bit hard to find usually in your bigger supermarkets, but just the grease-proof that you'd use for lunch wrap, that works quite as well. It doesn't go quite as translucent as the tissue, but it still works well.
Awesome.
So Excellent. And then, of course, just another thing when we're talking about matte gel mediums is that the other very popular brand in America is the Mod Podge. And we just really suggest that you don't use that for art journaling because that tends to leave your pages a bit sticky. So certainly the Dina one, Crafters Workshop, Liquitex, any of those others that dry properly are fine for art journaling, unless you want to be peeling your pages across.
That's good to know too, because I on my YouTube channel quite often people say, how do you seal your pages? How are they not sticky? And I've never had an issue with anything sticking, so that's good to know.
Yeah, that's worked well. And I really like what you said, how if you didn't have printed tissue, how you could create your own as well.
Yeah. No, and it's so much fun to do, and, you know, you can do your gel prints on the tissue and use those, so you've got those really fine papers. Stencil, if you've got leftover paint on your palette, just get a stencil and some tissue paper out and stencil, and then you've got collage photo for years to come.
Yep, no such thing as leftover paint. You can always use it somewhere.
No. Well, that's one of my favourite things. I've got a use it up journal. So any leftover paint I have goes into that, and it's instant backgrounds for something else.
Excellent. Now, Teresa says that she's still just waiting for her collage to dry, so that's okay. It has gotten a bit cold. And Mel mentioned that Woolworths has a brand, a Marta brand of hot pink package for your grease-proof paper. So
okay, I'll go and check that out.
Your Woolworths. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Niamh. Was there anything else you wanted to say to our crafters today?
No, just thank you very much for playing along. And if you did enjoy what you saw today, if you'd like to head over to my YouTube channel and check that out, because there's nearly 300 videos there of stuff, and I've got videos already scheduled up until August, so you're not going to run out of and I'm doing the 100-day project, which I'm filming, so that's another 100 videos ready to go. So you're not going to run out of content anytime soon.
Yeah, so your YouTube address is on the screen, and also I've put a link into the comments. I think it's actually under Niamh Henshaw rather than Niamh Baly, but that's okay. We can find you at either one. And crafters, we would love you to help Niamh out, because she's trying to get to that magical 10,000 followers on YouTube, and she's very, very close. So if you could pop over there and subscribe to her channel as well. But again, art journaling out to August, that definitely sounds like the place to be.
Yep, definitely.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Niamh. We'll see you over on YouTube.
Okay, bye for now.
Okay, thanks. Okay, crafters, so we hope you've enjoyed our special guest, Niamh Baly. We're so excited to have her here. We have actually been talking about her coming over and being a special guest at From Picture to Page Papercraft shows. And when we get back to having papercraft shows in real life, we'll definitely do our best to try and get her there as well. So, of course, make sure that you leave a comment so that we know that you're here. Make sure that you share it with your crafty friends. Hop over to YouTube and follow the From Picture to Page as well as the Niamh Baly page, and to get all your art journaling fix, and just again really come back and show what colors you can use, get out what you've got, give it a play, and as Niamh says, practice makes progress. So I think we'll definitely make that the theme for today. So this is Michelle Brown signing off. We hope you have a crafty day.